everyone, it's Gina K from Gina K Designs and your host of Stamp TV. And today I am so excited to be back on the Simon Says Stamp blog and the Simon Says Stamp YouTube channel. Today I'm going to show you a fun technique using two brand new sets that we just released last night. And all of the stamp sets and all of the products that I'm going to use in today's video are available at simonsaysstamp.com. Let me show you the tools and products you're going to need to do this technique. First, you're going to need some stamps, and the stamp sets that I'm going to use are the brand new You Make Me Smile stamp set. Now this is a big large floral stamp with some additional greetings, but I'm just going to use the floral stamp for this card. And for the greeting, I am going to use one of the greetings from the brand new Lettered and Lovely stamp set. This stamp set was designed by a brand new artist to Gina K Designs, Emily Schrepfer, and she is a hand letterer, and she hand lettered all of these beautiful greetings. So I'm going to use this one here, Life is Tough, My Darling, But So Are You. I love that greeting. The other items that you're going to need for this card are some Distress Oxide inks, and I am using Peacock Feathers and Twisted Citron. I'm also going to be using a Versamark ink pad. I'm going to be using some of the Gina K Designs Black Onyx ink. I'm also going to be using an embossing magic pad, some of the Gina K Designs Fine Detail White Embossing Powder. I just have mine poured into one of these Gladware containers. Then you're going to need some Prismacolor pencils, and I'm using Grass Green and Aquamarine. I also have some blending stumps, and this little tool just cleans the edge of your blending stump, and I'm going to be using that if I need to clean the edge at any time. I've got some Thermoweb tape. I've got a mono sand eraser in case I have any mistakes. And then I have a double-stitched circle die. This is from my Thermoweb collection of dies, and these are the small circle dies by Thermoweb. That's how they describe them, large and small. The small ones have the double-stitched, the large ones have the single stitch. For cardstock, I have some of the Gina K Designs white and some of the Black Onyx cardstock. I have some of these foam squares by Scrapbook Adhesives. And then I have a couple of acrylic blocks here. I'm going to be using this one just for some small detail work. I'm also going to be using some Gamsol. And it comes like this, but I put them in the Tim Holtz Distress storage jars. I'm not sure if they're called Distress storage jars or not, but they're the little jars by Ranger. And then I have a couple of sponge daubers here, and I'm going to be using my Misty because that stamp is a nice big stamp and I want to get a nice clean impression. And using the Misty always helps. So let's start off with the stamp. Alright, to begin, I'm using one of the Misty corners. I really like these corners because they allow you to get your cardstock away from the edge of the paper. And in this case, I'm going to be stamping this image down off the edge of the paper. So I can't really have it down here in the corner. I guess I could have it tucked up here, but I really like the corners because it allows me to move things around and it gets me away from all three sides. Okay, so the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to position this. And right before I do that, I'm going to use the embossing magic pad to dust some of this powder over the surface of this piece of cardstock. And what that does is that removes any oil or any static on the surface of your card. And this way, the embossing powder will only stick where you want it. Alright, so for this one, I'm going to place this just like this, kind of coming off the edge of the card. And then I'm going to pick that up using my Misty. Get that right into position again. And now I'm going to ink this up using some Versamark ink. I really want to get it nice and inky. Whenever you're using new stamps for the first time, Versamark is actually a really good ink to use because it helps other dye inks stick to the stamp a little bit better. Alright, so I'm going to get a good impression there. Now I'm going to take this in two steps. I'm going to first emboss that part, and then I'm going to stamp it again and emboss the second part. This way I don't have to worry about anything getting smeared along the way. And I'll be able to see my image a little bit better because it will be raised. Alright, so now I have that powder on there, and I'm going to grab a heat tool. I like to heat my heat tool up for just a second or two before I actually start to emboss, because this allows the card to not warp as much when you don't have as much heat on it. It allows the embossing powder to melt faster, and you don't need to hold it on there quite as long. So this is going nice and quick here. Alright. And so that is all heat embossed. Alright. Now I'm going to slip this down here on the bottom. I'm going to put my magnet there, because now I'm going to bring this stamp in from the top. Actually, probably a little bit more from the side, but I'm going to kind of sneak it in there so that I'm sure you can't see this. Let me see if I can turn it a little bit, but you can see that image there. The way that it's laid out, you're able to see it in real life and just kind of fit this image into the open parts. So I'm going to stick it right in there like that. And then I'm going to pick it up with my MISTI. I'm going to go back over that with some of that embossing magic, and I'm going to ink it up once again with some Versamark ink and stamp it. And that kind of filled in the cracks. You'll be able to see it a lot better once I get that oxide ink on here. Okay, so now we are done with the MISTI for now. I'm going to just put that aside and grab my embossing powder. There we go, looking good. All right. And then I'm going to emboss that. Now this heat tool is pretty hot right now, so it should emboss pretty quickly. Alright, looking good. Make sure all the powder's melted. And now I'm ready for my next step. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit so you can get a closer view of what I'm doing. My next step is going to be to use the Oxide inks. And I've got the Twisted Citron and I've got the Peacock Feathers. And then I like using big sponge daubers, but you can also use the Tim Holtz blending tools. They work really well. Alright, I'm going to start with this Peacock Feathers ink. And I'm going to grab some of that ink onto the sponge dauber just by rubbing it across. And I'm actually going to ink over just the flower images. So I'm going to kind of start like right in the middle of the flower and then kind of come out that way. Like that. So I've got those flower images inked up. Now I'm going to grab some of the Twisted Citron, do the same thing, and I'm going to blend some of that green into that turquoise. And then I'm going to go back over the whole thing and blend it together so it's a lot more seamless. I can bring some of that turquoise out now. And then back in with the Citron. What's really nice about the Oxide inks, and I'm sure so many of you have them and know, is that you can just keep blending and going back and forth over the whole piece until it's blended exactly the way you want. Every time you go back over it with some of the other color, it kind of reactivates the whole thing again. So, but we're not going to do any of the spraying on here and putting the water droplet look on here. We're going to do something a little bit different. So let me just finish this up, getting a nice smooth blend. And there we go with that. I'm going to do a little bit more over here. I kind of want a little bit of that turquoise coming in. Okay. All right, so that's looking good. I'm going to use my tidy towel here to clean up this area and get some of this oxide ink off of my workspace. And then I have a paper towel close by just to dry it. All right, so now my next step is going to be something that I saw on Jennifer McGuire's latest video, one of her latest videos, where she did something called, it was like a watercolor lift or an oxide lift technique where she used a water brush and she pulled some of that color off. So I'm going to do something similar to that, but I'm going to take it a step further. I also saw my daughter do this on her YouTube channel. It was pretty fun to watch her. You can, you'll notice that the lines here are a little bit tinted from the oxide ink, but when you put some water over that, that just cleans that all up. So it turns that bright white again. And then I'm going to take a paper towel and I'm just going to pull up a little bit of that color. Not a lot, just a little bit. I'm going to do it to all the leaves. I should probably keep this close by. And you can see how the color's lifting a little bit. And I want it to lift because I'm going to go back and add color in over this. And that's just cleaning up all the white lines too. Okay. This shouldn't take too long. Now, if you use watercolor paper for this, you're going to get a more vibrant lift. But I'm using just regular white cardstock. This is the Gina K Designs white cardstock. So the lift isn't going to be as dramatic. But I do like using this cardstock with colored pencils. It's very, very smooth, and I like the way it works. But you can see those white lines are getting more and more vibrant as I go. It's subtle, but it's definitely happening. There's a lot of flowers here. And you can see the way those two floral image impressions work really well together. All you have to do is just turn them a little bit, and it gives you a really pretty look. Looks like one big, huge stamp. All right, almost done. Can do a lot of this all at once. Just really need to clean the yellow up. It leaves a yellow tinge on there when you use that twisted citron. Okay. All right. So now my next step, oh, I still have a little bit over here I can see. There we go. Okay, so my next step is just going to be to take my heat tool, and I want to go over it one more time just to dry that cardstock a little bit. And that will actually help lighten things up even some more. You can also turn it over and do it on the back if you're getting any curling. That will kind of fix that for you. All right. And so now I want to show you this next part of the technique where I'm going to use some of these Prismacolor pencils. One thing that I have found is that the oxide ink reacts in a really cool way with the pencils and the Gamsol. So I'm going to just color a little bit down near the bottom of each of these flowers. And it's good to have a nice sharp point, especially when you have little detailed areas like this. You can slip that point right into those small areas. You can see all I'm doing here is just coloring at the bottom of each petal. I'm going to do a couple of these, and then once you get the idea, I will show you my finished card. All right, so now I've got those petals colored. So now my next step is going to be to grab some of this Gamsol and a blending stump. And you can clean that off, again, using this little piece of sandpaper, you can get it to a nice point, and you can also clean off any color that was left on there from before. I think this is the same color, but if it's a little bit different, I don't want to contaminate it with the wrong color. Okay, so now I'm going to dip that blending stump into the Gamsol, and I really want to saturate the blending stump. You don't want to just do a quick dip in and out. It's not a paintbrush. It is actually compressed paper. So you want to make sure you put it in there for a minute to allow that paper to absorb some of that Gamsol. And then using a circular motion, I'm going to color and move that color up to the top of the flower. And you can see the oxide starts to blend right along with it. I was really surprised how well this color looked on top of that oxide ink. I really wanted to add a little bit of vibrancy to this so that the flowers would really stand out from the background, but still keeping in that same color theme. And so using the Gamsol and just blending that color up right into the oxide that's left behind is really fun. It really kind of gives it a watercolored look, but it's very controlled. So if you have a little fear of watercolor, you're just, you know, not feeling like you're in the mood to use it, and you want to try this, you'll get a really pretty blend with that. All right, I'm going to do this big flower. You can really get some color in there. You may have to sharpen your pencil once or twice as you go. I'm only going to do this flower and then a couple leaves, so I probably won't need to do that, but it's good to have a pencil sharpener close by. Okay. I'm going right along the bottom, kind of where the flower would be, where the petals would be coming out from the bottom of the flower. So on some of the petals, it's kind of going up, but for the ones that are folded out, you want to kind of go down in this direction instead. This is very relaxing. If you're looking for a very relaxing coloring technique, colored pencils and Gamsol is it, because it's very controlled and you can just take your time and you're not dealing with water or anything like that. Although I love watercolor. I'm really into watercolor right now too, so I don't know. Whatever you're in the mood to do. Okay. But I wouldn't use watercolor with this because water's going to break down the oxides. So, and I don't think I would try Copics either, because you probably will pick up some of that oxide ink on your Copic markers. So this seems like a real fun, easy way to add that color. It just gets from dark to light. And if you have any trouble with the Gamsol, make sure that you're actually starting to blend over the color. It's not the same as other techniques where you just want to go right to where that last color stopped. You actually have to move the color first, and then you kind of in a circular motion move that up. So if you're not starting on the color itself, you may not get much movement. So you can see I'm getting right in there. You get a lot of movement out of one little dip into the Gamsol too. Okay, almost done here. So you can see how that's really starting to make those flowers glow, because all of that vibrant color on the flowers is still the exact same tones as what's in that background. So it really looks best if you stick with the tones that are the same as what you did with the oxide inks. In this case, the turquoise kind of color and the green for the leaves make it the same kind of green and the same shade of turquoise. and it really, really blends well. All right, just a little bit more here. And then, there you go, you can see how that's blending. So for the green, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to add a little bit. I really sharpened that to quite a point. Same thing, I've got this green that's the same type of green. It's not a brown green, it's a very vibrant green. And then I've got a filed down, let me use the other side, filed down blending stump here. I'm going to dip it for just a second to let it really saturate. And then I'm going to work that green down the leaf. And you can go back into the smaller areas just with what's left on the blending stump. You can see how that looks. We'll do one more little leaf here. This is actually a bigger leaf. And again, blending stump in, and blending that color out. And take it right to the very edge. So you can see how that looks, all that vibrant color. So now I'm going to show you my finished card project. Let me wipe some of that away. Here's the finished card that I made, and I used that beautiful greeting from the Lettered and Lovely stamp set, and then I cut it out using that double-stitched circle die, and I added just a couple little elements using the Oxide inks to keep that color consistent. So there is my finished card. All of the products that I used today are now available at simonsaysstamp.com. I hope you've enjoyed today's coloring technique video, and thanks so much for watching.